Hey guys, it's Shara from Woodshop Diaries, and let's build a workbench with storage drawers and a flip top. In case you're wondering why I put the flip top on here, it's because I'm going to be adding a CNC machine on this bottom shelf. I didn't want it to take up valuable real estate on the top of my workbench, but I did need access from the top side. So I just came up with this flip top thing. All right, so let's get building. This video was sponsored by my friends at Make By Me, a drawing program for your DIY projects. We will discuss some of its features later in the video. For now, let's get building. I built this workbench from basic 2x4s and 3/4 inch plywood. You can find the full materials list in the description below, along with the plans. To get started, I trimmed down the 2x4s to build the frame of the workbench. I wanted my workbench to be approximately 36 inches tall, and the casters that I bought were 5 inches tall. So I cut 8 2x4s to 31 inches to make the legs. I know it's just a workbench and it's going to get beat up over time, but I still didn't want any splinters, so I did take the time to sand each piece here before assembling. Then I paired up these pieces and glued and screwed them together to make 4 legs. The legs were the easy part, but then I had to decide how I wanted to design the rest of this workbench. So I used Make By Me to draw out a few different ideas until I finally settled on this one. Make By Me is a program that allows you to design your own woodworking projects, piece them together, and get a visual of what it's going to look like before you ever make any sawdust. Make By Me is free to use, and it's a great tool if you're new to designing and drawing out your projects. You can shop for common materials to simply insert into your project and then just piece them together. These materials are already sized correctly, so you don't have to worry about knowing or remembering nominal versus actual dimensions. The 3D renderings look really nice, and you can change the wood type or paint pieces to get a more realistic view of your finished project. Once you've drawn it digitally, it provides you with a materials list, a cut list, and step-by-step diagrams of the assembly. You can go in and make notes and add some text to create your own plans. Check out Make By Me for yourself at the link in the video description. They are continuously adding new features, so be sure to click What's New when you head over and start creating. All right, now back to the build. Once I decided on my workbench design, I continued building the framing with 2x4s and pocket holes and screws. You'll notice that I ran the top 2x4s vertically, but the bottom 2x4s are run horizontally. You could definitely run them all vertically, but I laid the bottom ones on their side just to give me a few more inches of drawer space at the bottom. As I assembled, I made sure that the legs were all running the same direction, with the flat side facing the front and the back. Once the frame was built, I flipped it upside down to attach the caster wheels. Now, I'll link the wheels that I used here in the description below, but any heavy-duty caster wheel would work fine for this. You don't have to have anything specific. So that I wasn't screwing everything into end grain, I did angle the plate a little, pre-drilled, then used some washers and 1 1/4 inch screws to secure a wheel to each corner. From here, the rest of the build uses plywood, so I started breaking down my sheets using my circular saw and Craig Ripcut. Bubby attempted to help. Nope, no, Bubby. Bub. you gotta get down. Go lay down here with Lou. Come on, you gotta get down. But after some convincing, him and Lucy decided the best way to help was to provide company and moral support from a distance. Anyway, about the plywood. First, I ripped a 6.5-inch wide piece down the length of one of my sheets. Then I ripped another piece the same width off the end. If you're building this for yourself, I highly recommend checking out the cut diagrams in the plans. I trimmed these pieces down to make 2 side panels and a long center support for the drawers and the middle shelf. To keep assembly simple, I used pocket holes and screws to install these pieces into the workbench. I installed these so that they were about 3/4 inch inset from the inside of the framing. And you can see here that I just used a scrap piece of plywood as a spacer block. Once these were in place, I installed the long center support between them with pocket hole screws, making sure that it stayed centered and square as I went. Then I used 2 more plywood pieces to run between the long center support and the bottom 2x4 framing. These pieces will basically just give me somewhere to mount the drawer slides to later. And with that, the drawer framing was complete and it was time to actually add the drawers. Since the side panels weren't flush along the inside, I had to cut some scrap blocks to add here before mounting the slides. I just glued and screwed these into the side panels just like you see here. Once these were in, I flipped the workbench on its side to install 4 pair of 16-inch ball bearing drawer slides into these sections. I have a 4-part drawer building video series detailing how to build and install drawers from start to finish on my channel. I will link that in the video description if you'd like more information on building drawers. Once the slides were in, I built 4 identical drawer boxes. I started by cutting down my plywood pieces, obviously, and again, to make the most out of your plywood sheets, be sure to check out the cut diagrams in the tutorial linked below. Since this was just a shop project, I skipped edge banding on all of these pieces, which saved me a ton of time. Also, I normally cut dados in my drawer boxes to install the bottom panel, but in this case, again, since it's just a shop project, I skipped the dados too. In this case, I assembled the 4-sided drawer boxes using pocket holes and screws. Then I cut 1/4 inch plywood to fit over the entire bottom side of each. I just glued and stapled these onto the bottom to complete the drawer boxes. Now, normally I like to install my drawer boxes onto the slides without removing them from the project. But since these were so low to the ground and I was already tired of working on the floor, I removed the part of the drawer slide that mounts to the box and just screwed it into each side of the drawer. Once the slides were installed onto the drawer boxes, I slid them back into the workbench and called it quits for the day. But I came back the next morning to wrap things up. I thought it would be easier to install the drawer fronts before adding the shelf on top, so I went ahead and cut 4 drawer fronts from 3/4 inch plywood. There should be an 1/8 of an inch gap around all sides of the drawer front here. But since I didn't have the top in place to eyeball the spacing, I used some 1/8 inch shims on the bottom to help me keep my vertical spacing correct while I screw these in from the inside of the drawer box. Once all the fronts were installed, it was time to add the middle shelf that goes on top of the drawers. For this to fit, the corners need to be notched out where the legs are. So I used a Craig multi-mark tool to mark 3-inch squares at each corner and cut these out with a jigsaw. This part really isn't totally necessary, but it also doesn't hurt. I drilled a 3/4 inch pocket hole at each corner to secure into each leg. You'll see in just a minute. Now, as much forethought as I put into this, I never did consider the fact that I wouldn't be able to get the middle shelf in through any of the openings in the framing. So once I realized that it wasn't going to work, I decided to just remove the top 2x4 so that I could get this panel in place. Everyone always asks why I don't use glue on everything, and this is just a prime example of why. Once the shelf was in, I reattached the top 2x4, and at this point it really was pretty easy since the screw holes were already there to line it back up with. I used 1 1/4 inch screws through the top panel to secure it to the plywood framing below. After the shelf was screwed on, I realized that the pocket holes at the corners were not really necessary as this panel wasn't moving at all when I pushed on it. But it wasn't going to hurt to take a minute to just drive in the screws anyway, just in case. To finish up this bottom section, I added some simple black drawer pulls to each drawer. And now all that's left is the top. If you wanted a stationary top, you could simply screw it in place through the top panel or just use some corner brackets from the bottom to attach. I wanted the top to flip open. To do this, I centered a piano hinge on the top panel and secured it between the plywood edge and the top framing. I cut 2 pieces of 2x4 to fit together at a 90-degree angle. Then I cut another 2x4 with one end mitered 40 degrees and the other mitered 50 degrees to run between them. I installed these with door hinges, just the basic door hinges that you use in your house. First, I screwed the hinges to the brace. Then I screwed the brace into the legs of the workbench so that they were about 3/4 inches below the plywood. That way, when the plywood is flipped over, the braces are right at the bottom to support it. This allows me to swing these braces out and flip the top up so that I can access the inside of the workbench, but also it still gives me a surface area to work on, use as a desk, or whatever. And when I'm finished with it, I can flip the top back closed, swing the braces back in, and use it as a regular mobile workbench. I love that it's got drawers on both sides and plenty of space below for open storage. I hope you enjoyed watching it come together, and if you're interested in building your own, check out the plans or draw up your own totally custom design in Make By Me, linked below. If you want to check out all the latest projects and plans, be sure to subscribe to the channel and follow along. Thanks so much for watching, friends, and until next time, happy building!